talking in this segment, or in this topic of discussion, about the reactions or the outcome of the visit of President Vladimir Putin to Egypt and his meeting with President Sisi. And also we're going to be talking about the agreements, and also the agreements in regards to the building of the nuclear power plant here in Egypt. And we're going to be also talking about the future, or the boost in the bilateral relations between the two countries. We know that since it was the Soviet Union, there was trade partnerships between Egypt and Russia, and there has been a long history of historic relations between the two countries. So to discuss this issue in depth and thoroughly, we're most delighted to be joined in the studio by Dr. Ahmed Mehna. He's a political and economic expert. First of all, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, sir. Maybe I want to start by asking you, because we are talking right now about the exchange rate, talking about the currency between Egypt and Russia. I'm talking about tourism, how far we are going to take benefit of this. So, as an economist, how do you see this agreement, and how far we can take benefit of this? I know I'm starting, something, we have to start with something else, but as long as we're talking about it.
There isn't a problem. We'll give a collective view on the issue. Let's start first that the economic relationship started between Russia and Egypt in 1948, and that was the export of cotton against the seeds, and we know that Russia is the first exporter, or the largest exporter of wheat, which basically the main thing that we need in Egypt. In 1997, there was an agreement between the Businessmen Association in Egypt and Russia. In 2002, we've seen a memorandum of understanding between the Central Bank of Egypt and Central Bank of Russia. So here we will get to the point of the... In terms of the exchange rate, Egypt is really facing a problem at the moment in terms of the fluctuation of the exchange rate between the Egyptian pound and the dollar. In most cases, it's not the increase of the value of the dollar, it's actually the depreciation of the pound and the buying power of the Egyptian pound. The exchange, or the trade exchange between Russia and Egypt will help Egypt to reduce its dependency on the foreign currency in terms of the dollar. So, for example, if we are importing, and if we're looking at the trade agreement between Egypt and Russia, we import around $10 billion worth of goods, and we've got a trade deficit of about $8.5 billion. So instead of changing $10 billion to pay Russia, we will actually pay directly in Egyptian pounds. So that will reduce our dependency on the dollar, on the US dollar, which means that it will stabilize the price of the US dollar in Egypt. The same thing will happen to the Russians inside Russia. Now, whenever we need to exchange anything else, we will use the same currencies. Tourists can use the Egyptian pounds, can exchange it in Russia, and come with the Egyptian pound to Egypt. They don't have to change it to dollar. So therefore, Russian tourists coming to Egypt will come with Egyptian pounds, not with dollars. Might be on some cases it's not going to be helpful in terms of exporting from other countries, because we need the dollar. But in terms of the trade agreement between Egypt and Russia, definitely is beneficial. We reduce the dependency on the US dollar, and this is exactly what Russia is trying to do. And I don't think it's particularly really focusing on Egypt alone. I think it's the beginning of implementing the same approach in the entire Middle East, which is the warm waters. It's always the focus of the Russians to get into the warm waters, the Mediterranean and the countries around it. And I think Russia, with the sanction that is really enforced by the Europeans on Russia due to Ukraine, Georgia, and other parts, I think they're trying to find trade partners in other parts of the world. And now with the BRICS, the BRICS group, I think taking Egypt into that group as well will help us. So the focus now is into importing policies that might be new to us, but will definitely help us, and will reduce our dependency on the Western Europe and the United States. So definitely it's a great idea to start.
Dr. Speaker, about the West, what does this meeting or the two-day visit of President Vladimir Putin and the ceremonies, the reception that we have seen, what does it signal to the West.
Let me tell you, on other episodes I've mentioned that is not complementary to President Sisi. I think President Sisi has got the vision of Alexander the Great. He just still doesn't have the tools. The vision here means that he's reframing the policy of Egypt in terms of international relations and international trade. He's trying to create new partnership agreements with Russia. We've seen that from the previous visit of President Sisi to Russia. We've seen that from his visit to China, Italy. We've seen that from his visit and the meeting with Cyprus and Greece, Italy and France and Vatican. I think he's reframing the entire policy of international trade and international politics. The dependency on Russia in the next time, in the next few years, I think also repeats history, because we've seen Russia always standing beside Egypt and supporting it in hard times. We've seen that in 1948, we've seen that in the nationalization of the Suez Canal, and we've seen that from the volunteers. The Russian volunteers will be actually threatening the United States. They will fight with the Egyptian army against the Britain, France and Israel. So this is really the time of Russia. There was a problem in the Egyptian-Russian relationship during the 80s and 90s, and I think now President Sisi is trying to renew that relationship and rebuilding a new one that is based basically on independence of decision and absolutely mutual benefits. Russians need Egypt as a strong country or the leader of the Arab area. They need Egypt as a key to Africa, because that's really where the natural resources are. So I think Russia is benefiting as much as Egypt is benefiting from Russia. In terms of the meeting between the two leaders, I think the beginning was from the delegates that their visit preceded President Sisi, and then President Sisi went to Russia. Here is the return of the visit, and if you allow me to, just to highlight some of the symbols, giving the Russian jacket to President Sisi, basically it's a symbol that Russia will cover Egypt whenever it needs it. The president of the Kalashnikov from President Putin to President Sisi, basically Egypt, Russia is willing to arm Egypt. So I think here these symbols are very strong. We have to look at in that.
Also having dinner in the Cairo.
Absolutely. We were actually talking about that last night, because President Nasser very clear. Absolutely, because it was actually built by the funding from the United States, £6 million that's actually to make Egypt, force Egypt to change its policy against the United States in terms of the liberalization of the Arab countries. And I think once President Nasser took the money, he actually didn't want to put it in the subsidy of the country or even any economic benefits. Subsidy of the country or even any economic benefits. He built a tower to remain always an example of what the Egyptians can do. Absolutely. So taking them there can actually prove that the Egyptians have the free will to establish relationship, whether economic, trade or political or international relations with whoever, because a strong country has a leadership role not just in the Middle East but the entire world. And the last point in terms of cooperation, I think the cultural cooperation. Acting, singing, music, and we've seen that cultural centers are spreading across Egypt, and this is the soft power. I think Egypt lost its leadership position in the 90s due to its inability to use its soft powers in terms of culture, religion, Al-Azhar, the church, and I think this is now what Egypt needs to focus on, and the focus on new relationship is going to really take the three major factors into account: political, economic, and
also there is a very important decision, if you allow me, regarding the censorship, and since from now on movies won't be censored, and this is a step forward in regards to the evolution of culture.
Yeah, the discussion we had yesterday, last night, was actually around the same topic. Which is actually better for Egypt, to have a Russian military base on its land, or build a cultural, social relationship? And it's always the cultural, social relationship that establishes strong ties that never really ends. And unlike what we see in Qatar, for example, that small, tiny country that had a dream to be big at some stage, because they have a military base that belongs to the United States on their land, thinking that makes them a powerful country.
Sir, talking about this, definitely we are all happy with this, what happened, and you feel proud because the ceremony that took place no one can ever believe that this is Egypt.
Yeah.
It is completely different, you know. It is not part of the protocol, but it reflects direct message to the West. But who's going to harvest? Because this is the word that we used to talk about. Who is going to take benefit, the opportunity to start working? Because as you mentioned, we have many different opportunities when it comes to the relation between Russia and Egypt.
Yeah.
And we have to admit that on the other side, there are many people who are not in favor of this.
That's right.
Those who are taking benefit of the different or mutual work between, of course, the United States, Europe, and Egypt, the businessmen, the huge companies.
That's right.
They're not interested, or they're not in favor, and they will start to put some obstacles.
Yeah.
Can this, are they going to succeed? How can we work or to face this challenge?
There is a say that I actually believe in it, that the West really invaded us, not because of their power, but it's actually because of our weakness.
Because of us.
Because of us. We were really, we've seen the former President Mubarak, he allowed really to be under the feet of the Americans and getting into everything in our life, into health, into social, into agriculture. And we've seen the major damage that really caused. And in the end, Egypt lost its image, not just the world, but the entire Middle East and the Arabs. Now we've seen tiny countries that started to talk about Egypt as if it was an equal country to them. They totally forgot the favors that Egypt has always done for them. So here, I'll go back to your point, is what we need is the political will. Political will is always what made us lose the opportunities. We've seen a lot of agreements. We've probably got over 70 trade agreements between Egypt and Russia. Most of them have not been activated. The same thing with China. And if you look at the trade agreements between Egypt and China, we export to China, for example, $700 million worth of goods. We import 7.4. So we actually have a trade deficit of $7 billion. We've got trade deficit of $8 billion with the United States and $8 billion with Russia. So here is the clash between the businessman community and the state. Now, if you talk about the import and export, globalization, I'm not in favor of globalization because we don't have the economic power to back up our community, to protect our industries, and we've seen the problem of cotton. We cannot even export it because of the trade agreements we went into. So here, what you mean is basically a reform on our side, that we should have people that believe in that vision. And I've always said that President Sisi is having the difficulty, as I said in the beginning, he's got the vision of the example, but he doesn't have the tools. And the tools is the administrative system. We've got a 6.5 million people in the administrative system, costing the country 209 billion pounds, 26% of the budget, and we already got a deficit increasing to 120 and 32
Can we have some new faces and support them when it comes to this? I don't know whether this can work or not, but because unfortunately we have some tycoons, they are controlling the market, and there are many people who are willing to get into the market and work, but unfortunately they are not able to.
We've got to differentiate. When it comes to administrative reform, we've got to differentiate between people that really sold Egypt, and I mean the word sold Egypt, because absolutely, and the ones that are actually not qualified. And we were talking this morning about people that actually have the will to help Egypt in terms of agreements or even marketing tourism. I'm finding it very hard for the employees that in the Ministry of Tourism and the promotion and association to actually market Egypt. I've seen trade exhibitions that are really held in other countries, costing the country fortune, and nobody visits it because of the two problems that we have. In terms of the administrative reform, we need to look at three areas parallelly. Number one, the people that work in the administrative system, are they qualified? And in terms of qualified, the corrupted ones need to be isolated and excluded and taken out. The ones that are not qualified, we need to have new faces, as you kind of mentioned. It's absolutely true. We've got a new era. We're entering a new era. We need people with different vision and the ideas that will change Egypt in the face of the 21st century are the ones that think outside the box, because using the same tools will lead to the same results. Now, here's a question to President Sisi. If you want to have new results in the 21st century with new movements, how is that going to happen if you've got the same faces? It's not going to happen. So we need an urgent administrative reform, that people that can actually believe in the same vision. And that's exactly what we need, is the people. The institutions, we've got 36 ministries. It's a lot. It's a huge administrative system. In the United States, we've got 12. So we need to work in silo, help organizations to work, and this is exactly the system that's going to work in investment, in foreign direct investment. The main entity that will be dealt with in terms of investment is the investment, the GAFI.
So in your opinion, do you think that there's, you said, kindly mentioned that there's a political will. Yeah. Do you think that there's a clear vision?
Definitely. President Sisi has a clear vision. But with that clear vision, we need the tools to implement. And the tools are basically the administrative system. Your institutions, the people that work in the system, and the legislation. The